On an evening in the fall of 1965, a young student at UC Berkeley was visited by a high school friend, bringing the gift of what appeared to be small orange mothballs. Having already been familiar with the psychedelic landscapes of LSD, the young man courageously took a toke of the substance and was transported instantly into what he described as a brightly lit, non-three-dimensional, self-contorting, linguistically intending modality that couldn't be denied. He went on to describe the experience as a hallucination of tumbling forward into these fractal geometric spaces made of light. And then I found myself in the equivalent of the Pope's private chapel, and there were little insect elf machines proffering strange little tablets with strange writing on them, and I was aghast, completely appalled, because in a matter of seconds, my entire expectation of the nature of the world was just being shredded in front of me. I've never really gotten over it. And it would seem he never did, as the young Terence McKenna's life was turned upside down by this experience with DMT, as the eloquently spoken introvert would dedicate much of his time on planet Earth, traveling the globe and detailing the experiences of DMT to all those who would listen. In one of his later talks, McKenna would exclaim, "I couldn't understand why there weren't 11-inch headlines on the front page of every newspaper on the planet saying something like, 'Doorway to hyperspace discovered. Elf negotiations proceeding.'" N,N-dimethyltryptamine, better known by its stage name DMT, is one of the most powerful psychoactive compounds known to humanity. And yet, even though it's been used for thousands of years in the past, remains as elusive as ever in the modern day. Reasons for this have been speculated, but what will come to be known as the spirit molecule has seen a renaissance in recent years with the advent of online psychonaut communities like DMT Nexus and Earwid, and, well, of course,
DMT, N,N-dimethyltryptamine, DMT.
First synthesized in a Canadian laboratory in 1931, it wouldn't be until 1956 when DMT's hallucinogenic properties were first discovered by Stephen Sara, a Hungarian chemist and psychiatrist originally seeking and failing to get his hands on LSD, instead extracting DMT from the Mimosa hostilis plant, and self-administered the first intramuscular trip to hyperspace in recorded history. With its strong effects now known by modern science, links were soon made between DMT and the active ingredient in the psychedelic shaman brew, Ayahuasca, which required the use of both DMT and MAOI containing plants in order to be taken orally. How these plants were discovered and combined by the South American shamans remains a mystery to this day. Meanwhile, in the psychedelic 60s, the use of intramuscular DMT continued, with experiments via the Harvard Psychedelic Club's Richard Alpert, Ralph Metzner, and Richard Nixon's soon-to-be public enemy number one, Timothy Leary, sharing and experimenting extensively with the compound in both scientific and casual settings, sending whispers of its miraculous effects rippling through the underground psychedelic community. But it wasn't until psychedelic clandestine chemist Nick Sand would go on to synthesize a smokable form of DMT, opening the door to anyone with a hashish pipe and a lighter to interdimensional travel. The previously mentioned Terence McKenna would be one of them, and would go on to be the most outspoken proponent of DMT, well, until
DMT, N,N-dimethyltryptamine, DMT.
In all, DMT would find its way into the hands of many of the most well-known figures of the era, with documented accounts of artists, musicians, and authors such as William Burroughs, Jerry Garcia, Ken Kesey, Grace Slick, Hunter S. Thompson, Jimi Hendrix, and Allen Ginsberg, just to name a few. With the Controlled Substances Act of 1970 and subsequent war on drugs, all legal psychedelic research in the United States would end, save for a few underground chemists and dedicated psychonauts. DMT, having never reached the mainstream status of other compounds like LSD and psilocybin, was once again shrouded in mystery and relegated to the underground, spoken about around campfires by those who claim they had once dabbled in interdimensional travel. That is until 1990, when a young Rick Strassman undertook what would become the first psychedelic-based study on humans since the war on drugs had begun, kicking the door back open for psychedelic research and discovering just how deep the DMT rabbit hole may actually go. These findings, published in 2001 in his landmark book, DMT, the Spirit Molecule, would begin NN-dimethyltryptamine's foray back into mainstream culture. Well, that and
DMT, NN-dimethyltryptamine, DMT.
Of course, these days, you might even hear about your parents talking about an ayahuasca retreat as the good news spreads and accessibility grows, and clinical trials are currently underway studying the effects of DMT on depression and stroke. Recently, Colorado has even outright legalized DMT, although it remains a Schedule I substance federally in the United States. Yet in its most potent forms, and even with the help of our friend Joe, NN-dimethyltryptamine still remains as elusive as ever. And with that, let's join the discussion. This is the Psychedelic State Podcast. What's up, and welcome to the Psychedelic State Podcast. My name is Brett, and I'm joined by my friends Ashley and Carson. And on this podcast, we'll be commentating on the current state of psychedelic substances as they make their way back into mainstream society. So today we will be talking about a compound definitely very near and dear to my heart, and something that I actually didn't get my hands on until quite recently. NN-dimethyltryptamine, or DMT.
DMT.
As Joe Rogan would call it. So we had actually recorded this podcast once before on DMT, where I thought it would be a good idea to smoke DMT prior to the podcast. And although
It was a great idea.
a miraculous
worked out
trip,
perfect.
yeah, it wasn't very conducive to a dialogue, I guess. And you know what? To be honest, that's really what sums up DMT, at least smoke DMT in a nutshell, is like the experience in itself is so profound, so otherworldly, so alien, so out of time, out of
Strange.
space, high strangeness at its finest, that it's nearly impossible to come back and talk about it. Like, it's really kind of the thing you come back from and just go, holy shit.
Yeah.
And that holy shit could mean a plethora of things. My experience personally with smoked DMT, which, and we'll also be talking about orally ingested DMT via ayahuasca ceremony or just ayahuasca in general. So my first experience with DMT came, it wasn't really that long ago. How long ago? I mean,
Probably
I'm not gonna,
less than a year.
yeah, I think that makes sense. And the first time I took it was not in a very conducive setting. I mean, the setting was fine, but it wasn't very conducive as far as how we were doing it. It was put on top of some CBD leaf and smoked. And I now look back and realize that we were basically burning the shit out of it.
Yeah.
I did not have a breakthrough experience at that time, but it
Fucking Jack,
even,
man.
even that
Fucking
experience
Jack.
was like the most profound thing I had experienced up to that point. The geometry that I experienced, like the hallways, the rooms, like it was straight out of an Alex Gray painting. and a few of them in particular. Um, I mean, as far as Ashley, what would you say about like your first maybe time or two giving it a shot?
Well, my first time, I actually smoked it the same way, on top of flour, and I got kind of this is pretty cool, not fully blasting off. And then the first time I blasted off was actually a funny story. I was playing a show, and I had been dating a girl, and she brought another guy to the show, and I was having a horrible night, and I saw this dude that I went to college with who was like originally straight-laced, like business student guy, and he came down looking like a little motherfucking hobbit. He had like a funny little hat on, a long beard. He was doing weird little jigs while I was playing, and he's like, "I got a gift for you,
definitely
brother."
went to a fish show at some
Yeah,
point.
man. He looked like he played the fife, like he was like playing the pan flute or something like that. He looked like he would like harvest figs and keep them like in a little hole through the winter, you know. But so we went to a party afterwards. He was like, you can't have your present here." And at this point, I'm like, I want my fucking present. But I knew that it was something strange, because I mean, you can give presents just about anywhere, but this present I couldn't get until I went home and sat in a little circle with his silent friend. He had like a watcher with him who wouldn't talk the whole night, which I thought was pretty fucking spooky. But we ended up, he gave me a little like glass airplane bottle, and I was like, breathe this shit in. And at this point I'm like, probably DMT, like probably, you know, but who am I to judge what I'm about to smoke? You know, I was like, fuck it, let's go, baby. And I'll tell you what, I breathed it in, the first time, blew it out. He's like, take another hit, and he's like forcing me to hold it as long as possible. By the third hit, I blew it out, and it was like sparkly crystals, and I'm like, I'm dying. I at that point was pretty sure that I had finally done drugs to where I was dying, which was surprising because, you know, I've got a lot of drugs and I'd never thought I was really going to die. And this time I was like for sure dying. I go there and do the whole fall asleep kind of thing. I shoot through the fucking astral plane, see all the geometry, and I wind up seeing these like triple faced gods like the Alex Grey. Amazing. And they're talking to me, and I'm going to do my best impersonation of it. It was not at all like this, I'm sure, because they probably weren't like just regular dudes. But they were like, Ashley. And I was like, what's up? And they were like, hey, man, sorry you're going through so many rough times, but you make music, and music helps other people, so we give you this shit. And I remember them saying cosmic earthworm, and I was like, that's pretty fucking cool. And at this point, I'm still like, well, I don't know why you're telling me this, because I'm fucking dead. I wish I'd known this while I'm alive. And then I start coming back to reality. The coolest part, well, not the coolest part, that was probably the coolest part, but the coolest thing that I could see back in the regular world was, as I came back, everything was still in that sacred geometry patterns, and like breathing in and talking, I could see molecules going back and forth between me and the other people that I was speaking with. And I was like, we are all made of this fucking crazy ass energy dust that I can see right now. And I thought it was pretty fucking fantastic.
Yeah, that does sound pretty fantastic. It's you know, and it's one of those things where you know, it's evolved over time for me with smoke DMT to where the difference that I call it is going from like that kind of it's intricate geometry but almost blocky in a way, that to a very high resolution version of it. So it's almost like, I almost feel like this geometric stuff is could be like seeing things on a quantum level, like zooming in. That's my sense. I'm not claiming that that's what's happening.
You were totally claiming it. He's claiming it. He claimed it.
I'm sorry.
He fucking claimed it, Brett.
But then, like, I think Ashley and I were actually had went in with an intention one night of like communicating, and that was kind of the goal. And that time, I think we had I had gotten the glass vapor genie at that time, which we hadn't mastered yet, but I would highly recommend. Shout out Vapor Genie. GVG.
Sponsor us.
Yes, please.
I'm the businessman of the group. Sponsorships.
Yes. We're going to have to call them up. but it was interesting because I had kind of broken through for the first time to this place that was kind of like a city, and it was like a street. It was kind of like being outside my house, seeing a street, this crazy like car that looked like nothing I've ever seen. It was like a vehicle, and that was it. And then I smoked it again within a few minutes of coming down, which, you know, dampens the effects significantly. And I really had to like keep my eyes closed and focus, but there was like this floating kind of thing in front of me, like internally. And I was trying to communicate with it and saying like, you know, I'm here to bring back knowledge to Earth, you know, like
He was flirting with it. He was trying to fuck.
Like,
He was
really,
trying to fuck.
like,
Can I put my dick
communicate.
inside?
Yeah.
This thing did not respond in any way, shape, or form, and
Did not give consent.
no. And then from there on out, I've entered
He was very respectful.
These hyper real scenarios in, like, I don't even know how to describe them, but they're hyper real scenarios where I'm shown cities, where I'm flanked by other entities, where it becomes in a way an interface between this dimension of reality and another dimension of reality.
I think that's really what DMT is like an interface, like a chemical interface, right? You know,
that's what it feels like. Almost like it doesn't feel like a drug as much as it feels like it's
like a kind of technology.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's, you know, and again, it's like you come back from these experiences and you end up with more questions than answers most of the time, in my experience. And I'm still like, even though like I had a similar experience to Ashley in that the last time I did it and other times I've done it, you know, you come back with this understanding that it's a gift to be able to create. Like that's the gift we have as humans. And that's like, and you feel grateful that you're capable of creating. That's like the real like message that I've gleaned from it. If there's anything that's coming to me in these things beyond what's just happening, because you do end up in a timeless place where you really don't exist anymore. So it's not as connected as it would be during an ayahuasca experience where this person is having the experience.
Do you ever wonder, like, if an oil tycoon smokes DMT, if they're like, oh man, it's such a gift to be able to frack. I love fucking fracking the earth, dude. I love taking my metallic dick and fucking the earth and just destroying it. Oh, thank God.
Well, you know, there's not only like beautiful experiences of DMT, there's like people who have had horrific experiences too. And I wonder if somebody who, you know, is not open to the experience, similar to other psychedelic experiences, if you resist, you're not going to have a good time. And like, if the oil tycoon were to remain open to this experience, who knows? Like, it's a weird one, man. It's really a weird one.
I'm not entirely sure it's necessarily a matter of being open or not to it. It might just be like who you are as a person too, like, and how you interact with that drug. Like I find, like with marijuana, for example, some people don't like to smoke weed because it gives them anxiety, it makes them paranoid, it makes them question everything, and it's not a pleasant experience. Whereas, like, I think it's Tommy Chong that says, like, oh, you don't like smoking weed? It's because you got demons, man. And, like, it's sort of, you know, like, there's, like, unresolved internal issues, you know? And I think DMT can kind of be the same way. Like, if you're not right with yourself. Well, if you're not right with yourself and you smoke some fucking DMT, you might see it in an uncomfortable way or feel it in an uncomfortable way that, like, oh, like, I'm not right with myself or...
If you're not right with yourself, you better get fucking right quick with your smoking DMT, because I imagine it'd be a nightmare.
And it's like one of those things that is now, so I really want to kind of get into, you know, it's very interesting to me to figure out where DMT smoked. And again, we're going to get to ayahuasca after this, but where smoked DMT sits on like the spectrum of psychedelics and its capabilities for humanity. Like, you know, it's one of those things that it's uncharted waters to this day. There's a lot of underground research that has gone on. There's places like DMT Nexus, there's places like Erowid that have tons of recorded things and collaborative efforts of attempting to describe
Quantify.
entities, map this out, all this kind of stuff. You know, I've come up with an idea recently. I do not know if this has been done, but it just crossed my mind the other day that I want to try, which is actually pre-recording messages and then wearing headphones and trying to use my own sensory inputs as a way to communicate. You know what I mean? Since I necessarily won't be there, maybe there's a way that I can pre-record what I want to ask and then just have it playing in my headphones, and that will reach, because music seems to get through in certain experiences. I mean, like the last time I did it, it was the music kind of disintegrates. It like all
It sounds
audio
like the last time you did it might not have been the last time you did it, if you know what I'm saying.
So it's like, how do we communicate? And I really love this idea of like attempting communication using our own sensory inputs via sound and or language. I think language is probably has a lesser chance of working than using like sound in itself, like synthesizers, to try to use notes and see what kind of response comes back. But
I think if your like goal is to communicate, smoking DMT might not be the most effective route of administration for that kind of an experience. Like the people that are in those studies that they're doing in Imperial College, I think it's in London, where they're doing IV drip DMT, and they keep people in that state for like a whole hour. I think those types of experiences probably lend themselves more to like experimenting with whether or not you can effectively communicate with entities in that other dimension. Smoking DMT, like you can get some communication, but it's so fast and it's so rapid and it's so abrupt. Like, I think like doing the messages in the headphones thing could be a way of like reminding yourself what you want to communicate when you're in that state. But the time period is just so short for like actual communication. It's pretty tricky.
It is, and it's also timeless while you're there.
Yeah.
So even if it felt like you were there for 200 years, you're still in complete kind of just awe, and you become kind of just part of the experience. So you've kind of lost any sort of sense of
it's easy to stay in the observer perspective while in the DMT state. Hard to like keep enough of the personal self in there to like be like, oh, I have an intention for this, you know?
I mean, I would be really surprised to check out the drip, because having done both the smokable and the ayahuasca, while the two are vaguely similar, I feel like the drip might be somewhere in the middle,
Yeah,
because as far as ayahuasca goes, I feel like you still, I mean, I've heard people having taken high doses and losing themselves, but I still remained pretty cognizant of my body and my mind. Whereas when I smoked it, it's very like your body is fucking dunzo and your mind is shooting up to someplace that's it's like magnificent and crazy that it's almost so hard to comprehend. And while you're sort of in awe, it's hard to be like, this is what I want to get out of it,
Yeah, exactly. And it's really like completely, these studies that are happening now. And I want to give a quick shout out to Christopher Timmerman, is the guy who's at Imperial College who is leading these studies right now. I've seen I've watched a few lectures that he's given at other colleges and things like that. And he is just so on point with this. Like he's really passionate about the work. He's the right guy for the job, and he's pushing the boundaries in ways that we really haven't seen before. And he's a young guy, so he has a long, time ahead of him to really do this work. So, and I guess that's the other thing too, is like in the history of DMT, while it has been, Leary and a couple other people did use it do scientific trials with it. They did attempt, like they were attempting to communicate back here what they were experiencing. They created this kind of keyboard thing that would describe certain experiences, and they were trying to, you press a button if you're experiencing this, you press a button if you're experiencing this, and they were very broad kind of things, but it was very difficult to do so. But I mean, it goes as far back as that, you know, and they were doing IM injections, which usually result in like a 30-minute experience, I think, if I'm correct on that.
I've
but
never
these drips and like also like doing smoked low dose is something that I haven't experimented with too much, where it's
So
like kind
a
of
funny,
sipping it kind
a
of thing.
funny smoked low dose, which I actually did it unintentionally. I was trying to blast off, and then I realized that my dog was still in the room, and I didn't want to freak him out, so I smoked some, and then I'm like, oh shit, Ozzy's here, and I tried to get him out to put him in the other room, and I stood up, and I felt like I was in a fucking video game, and I was walking at a normal pace, but I felt like I was walking like super sped up, and everything I remember looking at him, and he had like big Disney eyes, and he was like, he was looking at me like, hey, what's up, dude? They're like, you don't want to be around me in like 5 seconds, dude, so let's go. And it was very crazy, and I remember being so happy when I got to like get back on the couch and just not be up and around, because I was like, this is so fucking strange.
My very first DMT experience was kind of like that too, actually, because like this was probably 15 years ago. My cousin had given me some, and I didn't have a proper apparatus for smoking it. So, and it's not easy to smoke it unless you've got like a vapor genie or whatever, you know?
Definitely.
Shout out vapor genie.
Not only that, but it's like you have to learn. It's like a tool to learn how to use. It's like playing
For
guitar.
sure.
Like you got to like figure out.
Yeah.
But yes,
Yeah, and
it's
so
very
like
difficult.
Yeah, what I did is like I had like these little glass jars that you'd get like maybe Coke or ketamine in or something like that. And I like held onto the neck of it with a pair of needle nose pliers and took a straw and like had the
Some fucking
straw
ratchet
over
shit
top of the
right
neck.
there.
Yeah, and then like fucking lit it with the lighter and like tried not to burn it and just like let it pool and puddle and like get as much as I could and like vaporize it and
That's
as
a
much
lot.
as I could. But it's tricky, right? And so like I didn't
It
get
really is.
enough to blast off, but like it started out, you know, like I can see the air, you know, where you can see the air and it's now fractal air
Yeah.
molecules or whatever. And then the walls get all patterned and then the walls sort of disintegrate and like you're in another room and you're like, are my eyes open? Are my eyes closed? Like
Totally.
I don't fucking know. And but that's as far as I got there, I would like that's like total just threshold dose, you know.
But
And
that's
then I
still
stood
like,
up.
you know,
Similar to you, Ashley, like stood up and tried to walk around and you're just like your body feels fucking alien. Like it doesn't you're not connected to it. Your mind is like in 1,000 pieces and like you're also it's more like automatic. Your body's automatically moving because you've got muscle memory or whatever, and that's that part of your brain's still engaged. But it's definitely like
So
walking
barely.
on fucking low dose DMT is fucking weird.
and that's really like the thing. Like DMT, I think the vaporization temperature is like 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Like it's not. Does that make sense? It's really low. I know
It's
that
not,
it's like
yeah.
ridiculously low. Like it's like weed is really high compared to DMT. So like it's really easy to burn it, and that's what I
Yeah.
didn't know at the beginning. So I'm like hitting it directly with a lighter. Whereas what the glass vapor genie does is it puts the DMT, for those who don't know, if you have like a glass pipe, you have a screen underneath it that you put the DMT on. Then there's a cap that goes on top of that, which is spaced out maybe like an inch from where the DMT is. And there's a kind of, I think it's a ceramic disc at the top, and you're basically heating that ceramic disc until it gets hot enough for the DMT to vaporize. And it works insanely
I
well.
was gonna say, it works.
Like the last few times I did it, like the first few times we did it, we were trying to get 3 hits in every time and whatever. The last few times I did it, 2 hits, and it's like 15 minutes of hyperspace, like directly through the tunnels, directly through the waiting room, and there are things that are mapped out. And I guess we should mention that, like the quintessential like experience starts with geometry, probably the most intricate geometry you could ever imagine. It's just like, it's so beautiful. It's so colorful. It's so insanely, it's like simple, but it's so complex in itself. Like the human brain could never imagine this kind of stuff. And then it can kind of become 3-dimensional, and you can feel like you're kind of moving down a hallway. And this seems to be a very similar experience among people. And then there's kind of a room. And this is one of the first experiences I had. And I was still, my hearing was still there. So I know that I hadn't like fully broken through, because I could hear the music in this room, and it was like very joyous. Like the music was definitely there, and whatever was in this room was enjoying it. And it was like, so that's what's called the waiting room in these kind of levels of DMT. And it's theoretically, call it what you want. We can get into this idea of like near-death experience, or post-death experience, or pre-death experience. And,
premature death ejaculation.
I want it. So
I just ejaculated my soul out of my body.
And that's kind of what it is. So it's like the waiting room it could be said to be like let's just say a waiting room in between lives. Like you're waiting there to be reincarnated, if we're going to go through like the Tibetan look at this stuff. And you're waiting there to be reincarnated. And I actually watched a movie the other day that really showed this very well. I can't remember
what movie is it?
Jared Leto is in it. It's about like time and what is it? But it shows this, there's a scene in it where he's talking like before he's born, and he's like choosing the mommy and the daddy, and it's all these like toddlers in this room, and the angels come over and like choose you to be incarnated. It doesn't look anything like
it didn't look. So I thought you were going to talk about that movie. It's like a Pixar movie, Soul. And there's that dude, he's like a jazz musician. Maybe it's not called Soul. I don't know. It's some sort of shit where there's a jazz musician and he's got a good gig, and then he dies right before it, and his soul goes up to this place. And I was looking at it and I was like, this motherfucker smoked DMT. Like,
I get it.
And because like it does to me, it always has. The first time I blasted off on it, I was like, this makes sense as to why there is talk of like DMT being present when you're born and when you die and this and that. Because it felt like that was taking my soul to some other place, and it wouldn't make sense if it was hanging out there for a second and then maybe blasted into another body,
Right.
Or like, luckily it came back into mine because I love this shit, but like, let's get it. But I mean, it felt like, I was like, oh, this is kind of like where souls hang out before they fucking go back into like the new body.
Well, that's kind of what it feels like, because there's still like an awareness that you were there, but while you were there, you're completely detached from this reality and this existence as a person, So it's like whatever is witnessing what we're experiencing now is witnessing that, and then breaking through almost feels like breaking through to another dimension of reality where maybe it's a higher vibrational quality. Like than this, where this may be, a band of vibration from here to here, and then the one above it is here, and there's one below it. Whatever. We can get into all that stuff another time.
That's the velvet rope, man. You're going from the waiting room to the VIP section, hanging out with the real heavy hitters.
That's kind of what it feels like.
That's where Rick Ross hangs out.
But I really would like to talk about, Ashley, I want you to get to this one story before we get into ayahuasca, because I think it really, before you had this experience, I had read about a similar experience in the book, Mystery School in Hyperspace. And I can't recall exactly who had it, but when you had it, I hadn't told you about it. And it was just amazing. But anyway, I really like you to recount this experience, because I feel like it really, like, it's one of those things that really hits home on what this experience could be and the reality of the experience in itself. So
Is it the story where I outran a Ferrari when they were driving really fast because I'm so fast at running?
no.
The one where I got a gold medal in the Olympics for being really, really tough and strong. Oh no, it's the Mindfold story. Okay.
The Mindfold.
So shout out Mindfold.
Shout out Mindfold. I'm pretty sure Alex Gray designed that. I've had one since like fucking
Tell me what it is.
2004.
So the Mindfold is like this blindfold thing that you wear on your face that completely blocks out all your visual perceptions. I love to use it when using ketamine. It's like extremely relaxing to pop on some John Hopkins, lay back with that thing, and it helps. It's helped me in other trips, kind of go more within. So,
and what the main thing about it is, like, it has 2 holes cut out, and then there's foam, so you can actually open your eyes and still be in complete darkness. That's like the idea behind it, like psychedelic experience with open eyes.
So I wanted to use that to try and see how it would be on a DMT trip. And so Brett and I were hanging out. So I think you had gone first, and then Brett was watching me, and I smoked it, and I felt everything normally happening. I was kind of like leaving my body and whatnot. But
well, from my perspective, here's what I saw, and I'll tell you first. Ashley's laying on the couch. I give him the pipe. He takes his hits. He lays down, and then about 15 seconds later, he gets up, and I'm like, oh my God, what is he? Is he about to like walk around the fucking room? And Ashley's like a very large man, and that's like my biggest fear is like Ashley like losing it on something because I won't be able to control him. And
you can't. No one can.
He sits up, he takes the mask off, he like looks around like this, and then lays back down. And that's all I saw. And I was like, okay. And here's his experience.
Well, so as my body began or my soul began to feel like it was leaving my body and going up through the thing, I could see the geometry, I could see stuff, but it was almost like I hit this glass wall, and I could see what was on the other side of it, and the other side was kind of, like true hyperspace. But I kept on, it was like I was in a fish tank. I kept on bumping into it, and that's why I was like looking around, because I took my mask off to see is like everything still around me. Where like what it was very bizarre. I didn't know entirely where I was. I was under the influence enough to not exactly see the room that I was in, but I still couldn't break through. And I kept on feeling like if I kept on going, I think I might have even tried to hit it again eventually, but obviously with it metabolizing so fast, it didn't really work. But for that entire experience, I felt like it was kind of lost because, and this is my thing, sometimes I make fun of hippies on this show, but third eye, dude, my third eye was all blocked, and
fucking blindfold.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
So I feel like maybe I was trying to shoot out of that, and the Mindfold was blocking it, which, now that I've done a little bit more research, I kind of want to get a hole drilled in my head so I can leave other ways. Right? But
or if you really hate somebody, you can fucking
shout out trepanation,
cover up their third
trepanation,
eye
man. I really, dude, my fiance is so pissed when I talk about drilling a hole in my head. I'm always like, it's pretty cool. Like, I could do it, and I won't even do it myself. Like, I'll have someone else do it. You can get it done in Egypt still. It's one of the few places that will still perform that, just from you asking it. And I'm Egyptian, man. I got my passport and everything. So, like, let's fucking get some holes. But I can't tell her. She's, like, so against it. And they're like, I just want to get a little fucking hole drilled. I just want to get my head pierced, Like,
did she see the Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia episode?
She did.
Yeah, she
I showed her the documentary of the lady. I was like, look at this fucking lady, man. She's super normal still. Like, she's all good. And she's like, yeah, but you're pretty fucking weird. So you need a hole in your head, like you need another hole in your head. And I was like, that's true. I guess that makes sense.
All right. Well, I think
so. You think that the Mindfold blocked your ability to break through because your soul was basically hitting it. That it seems crazy.
It felt like that.
That's like
seems crazy. But so like as soon as you
can like
once you took the Mindfold off, you could go, right? Like you went through the glass wall.
Yeah. By the time I took it off, I was already kind of just
coming down.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's
so
wild.
Weird.
And there is another recorded instance of this happening, and I'll track it down. But it really just goes to show like how kind of deep this shit goes. It's really an experience that transcends being human. It transcends like all knowledge and understanding of what it is, what the fabric of the universe is.
I also feel like it's almost, it transcends the experience of being human for sure, but I feel like it's almost something that humans are meant to do.
I think,
for sure.
Well, if you think about it, is that like really the idea? It's like, can we, and Terrence McKenna being a huge proponent of DMT, one of my favorite quotes of his was like, all artists, like any creative person in any capacity, needs to smoke DMT and try to bring this back into the world with them. And that's what will like advance this, advance humanity and this reality as a whole. Like we can create, we can move toward this higher vibrational level by bringing it back through art, through music, through all this stuff.
You look at it like you were talking about at the top of the show, the origins of ayahuasca is pretty mysterious, like finding these two plants to mix together. There's a lot of DMT containing plants, obviously. Everything has it in variable levels, but, with the mixture of these two plants becoming something that would be discovered, thousands of years ago, like, it's very strange to think that there wasn't some sort of, I for lack of a better term, divine intervention.
Yeah, some sort of intervention.
According to Jeremy,
go for it.
Well, according to Jeremy Narby in his book, The Cosmic Serpent, DNA and the Origins of Knowledge, he'd been in South America talking to shamans who've been doing ayahuasca for, their traditions have been doing it forever. They say like the plants themselves told them to mix those two vines together. So like that in itself is kind of like, divine intervention. Like the spirit of the plants connected with the shamans and were like, this plant and this plant, and this is how you make it. They were like instructed on how to make ayahuasca by the plants themselves.
It's
which
like
sounds
how
fucking
cheeseburger was invented. It was the spirit of the bacon and the spirit of the cheeseburger, and they were like, "Yo, this
you
shit's
must
gonna
combine us."
Yeah, they're like, it's a pig and a cow are hanging out on the farm, and some dude's like, I got a fucking idea with these two things.
I had a vision.
I think I saw that on Ancient Aliens.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, fucking aliens.
I love ancient aliens. So let's talk about aliens for a second, because I think that DMT and aliens have a lot. So if aliens were to get here from faraway galaxies, they'd have to travel interdimensionally. So that could be some of the things that we're seeing in this other dimension are these travelers. And I think that that's how, some of them want to talk to you. Some of them want to give you information. Some of them are just there, and some of them might just be passing through. It's very strange. There was a study where there was guys, they listened to people who were smoking DMT, and then talked to shamans and had shamans smoke DMT as well. And they would see very, very similar things as a dude who was in fucking college hanging out in America like a fucking, 19-year-old, while these guys have been, experimenting with the substance, not in that form, but for, decades. And it was strange that they would see these alligator figures or this little elves and stuff like that. And I know that I've seen alligator stuff and a lot of, jungle symbolism in ayahuasca trips, but also in actual DMT smoke trips. And it's very, very strange.
A lot of that very interesting symbology does come up.
Machine elves, man.
The like consistency of different people with no connection to each other having such similar experiences really lends itself to the hypothesis that smoking DMT, using that chemical interface technology, is like a way to transport to a completely different dimension, but that dimension is as real as this experience. And that's why when you go to that other dimension, people are experiencing and connecting with like the same stuff, the same locations, the same people or lack of a better term, people, I guess, like entities.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's interesting because like there's other substances like that too, like take ibogaine or like
I was just
iboga,
gonna
for
bring that
example,
up, man.
right? Because like with iboga stuff, like the trips are so consistent. People meet ancestors, they meet tribesmen from like African tribesmen. They have like life reviews, and like they're all having the same type of experience. The content might be slightly different, the information they receive might be slightly different, but the actual trip itself is so consistent, and it's like that with DMT as well,
And I think we'll
especially
find
smoked
that-
DMT.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
or intramuscular, or any of those. Like I think with these studies that are happening now, where they're giving, I don't know if it's IM or IV, low dose.
The drip
like
is
what you were just
IV.
talking about.
Drip
okay,
is
so like
IV for sure.
or IV DMT that can keep you in this space for a while. There's going to be so much to work with in connecting the dots, and I'm
Yeah.
excited to see those papers when they come out, because it's going to be.
I'm just putting this out
I'll
here.
look.
I volunteer all three of us for any IV drip DMT studies.
There is a
Oh,
website you can
fuck
go
yeah.
to called, I think it's clinicaltrials.gov. I went to it a few times. I might be wrong on the website, but I think that's what it's called. And you can actually find out what studies are accepting patients. Like I'm considering right now becoming like a tourist of like clinical trials. Like those will be my vacations. So it'd be like, oh shit, I'm going to Nevada to fucking get ketamine injected in the head of my dick. Or I'm
That'd be
going
sick,
to
man.
fucking.
You don't gotta
I
go to
think-
Nevada, man. Just go down the street, baby. I got you.
That's true.
I
Well,
think I
yeah,
in
do they-
Hialeah.
It's such a smoke DMT is such an interesting thing, and it's such it's to me it's the cutting edge of psychedelics. I do believe that it's going to surface in a way that we've seen classical psychedelics like mushrooms and LSD and others. It's going to surface in a way where the masses are going to get a hold of it. Like year after year, more people are trying it and getting access to it. I think timing is important, and there's a reason why it's been waiting, like why now is going to be the time. But I do think it's going to be that. That said, another aspect of DMT, and probably the one that has, way more recorded history with it, is the ayahuasca. And
My personal favorite.
and
Yeah,
we can,
I like it.
I'd like to get into talking a little bit about that, because that experience is completely different. And there is something in the middle called changa, which is
It's like a mixture of
it's a mixture
plant
of
material.
smoked that you can. It's a longer lasting but
Yeah.
less powerful, kind of in the middle of ayahuasca and
I believe it's like they use Syrian rue or harmaline or something.
right.
Tourmaline
it's
is the alcohol in Syrian root.
Syrian rue, right? So that's mixed with it, and it's like basically using the MAOI in that to affect
Extend
the
the
trip that you're having.
experience. So it's
Make it
it's-
last longer, basically.
Yeah. So that's actually another interesting route. Before we get into talking about any of that stuff, I just want to put it out there, because personally, I'm in the class of people that should not take an MAOI. And, I didn't know that until very recently. I, almost smoked chong. I don't know what the real, like how bad it would be, but
Smoke
if
chunga
you-
won't be as bad.
if you take any sort of SSRIs, you should
Or
not take
tobacco
an MAOI,
even.
because it's basically doing the same thing, and you could end
Yeah,
up.
you have a real high
like
susceptibility to getting serotonin syndrome, which is pretty fucked up.
yeah.
Yeah,
But anyway,
doesn't feel
that
good.
said, just to put that out there, because a lot of people are on SSRIs. Maybe you
Yeah,
guys
if you're on
can share.
SSRIs, do not take ayahuasca.
Yeah, so it's maybe you guys can share some of your experiences with ayahuasca. I have yet to have the experience myself, but I know you guys, Carson, you've made your own brew years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I've made my own brew, and I'd never had a chance to do it with other people. So basically, I just did it by myself, drank it, laid in my bed, rolled around a bit, puked a bunch, like tripped balls for a while. It to me, it was more like a mushroom trip than a smoked DMT trip. You know, it's more similar to that. I was still, like Ashley said, like connected to my body, not like having my consciousness ripped out and like traveling to other dimensions. Very like tons and tons of like jungle imagery, like animals, snakes, big cats, lots of like jungle type trees and stuff. And then just, lots of personal insight into my own personal path, my own history, lots of like inquiry coming up, very similar to a mushroom trip, except the imagery is different. And I think, I probably went further, like it would be comparable to like a 4 or 5 gram mushroom trip, I guess, like quite a bit stronger than like just a regular, couple grams of mushrooms type of thing. Like I wasn't walking around much, just wanted to lay down and just
going into it?
My intention was to see what ayahuasca was about, pretty much. I hadn't done it before. I just read shit tons of trip reports, lots of books about it, and I was like, this is something I have to do and see what it's all about, see what the plant holds for me, see if I could connect to the ayahuasca, the spirit of ayahuasca, and just see what kind of insight it had for me. That was the intention. That's usually the intention with just about any new psychedelic substance that I take, is like, hey, what does this substance hold for me? What kind of value is here for me? And I haven't had a chance to do it much since. I've only done it twice, like on my own, and I would like to do it in a group setting, because I think there's something special about doing ayahuasca as a group. I just intuit that there's something more there, especially if you're guided by a shaman, someone who's singing a caros, like the ayahuasca songs, stuff like that. I really like to have that sort of experience, but I've yet
Come on
to
down,
have
baby.
it. There's lots of places. There's places around here that are doing it. It's just I haven't had it hasn't lined up yet. And I know like when it's like tricky to line it up, it's like not the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
When it's like everything lines up perfectly and the opportunity presents itself and you're like, this could work, that's like, I know I will like grab it and fucking do it for sure.
Yeah, it was that. My experience was in the group. It was at the UDV, the União de Vegetal, which is a organization started in South America and brought it to the States. It's actually legal to use. They sued the Supreme Court and got the right to use it legally for religious purposes. It was a fantastic experience. You are with people who have used the plant for 50, 60 years. And they do a little phone call with you before, like asking about medications you're on, medical history. So I felt very safe and secure going into it, and felt that even more when I showed up. The people were fantastic, like super cool, amazing energy. They made it very clear how much they would be there for you. And I remember there was so much of this like hive mind group think going on where you could feel other people. I remember there was a girl crying in the bathroom and I could hear it like slightly, and before anyone could get up, like one of the people was already walking to the bathroom to be there with her. And it was like, dude, like just such good. And like you were saying, the songs, the shamadas, I know there's different names for them between different, tribes and stuff like that, but the shamadas and the shaman would be the maestre. They were the group, and the songs and the whole experience was very, very cathartic, and it was very crazy. There were certain songs that would make you trip even harder, and everyone would be going through that. And then in the middle, there's an opportunity for you to drink more tea. At that point, I could understand Portuguese, so I was like, I'm probably fucking good, so I didn't have more, but a lot of people did drink more. I remember there was like an 80-year-old lady there, and the only reason why I was about to get up was because this 80-year-old lady like walked up and was like, yeah, I'll take more. Are you feeling it? She's like, just a little body high. And I'm like, wait, what? Just a little fucking body high? Like, at that point, I had already gone outside, thrown up. The grass was all elves. I mean, they gave me a big a big cup. I'm a big dude, so they gave me a big cup, and it was cool. But the weirdest thing was that I drank it, and I immediately was like, felt familiar. It felt like something I'd done before, and that was the first time I'd ever done it. So for me to feel so, it kind of seemed like maybe I'd done it in another life. And speaking with everyone afterwards, that's another cool thing, is that there is a period of integration afterwards where they had like snacks and shit like that, and everyone just sat around and talked about their experiences. And one of the funniest things was a dude who was from one of the nucleos out in San Francisco. He was there taking it with us, and he was a magician, and so he was doing crazy ass magic tricks afterwards. And that shit was, it would have been mind blowing had I not just taken an extremely powerful psychedelic, but it was extra fucking mind blowing. He had a card. I remember him going, pick a card, and he's like, I picked a 7, and he goes, all right, I'm gonna do this shit, and my card's gonna be half of your card. And I'm like, ha ha ha, motherfucker, I got an odd card. How you gonna do that? He pulled out the 3.5 of clubs. Yeah, it was like the shit like that, dude. And one of the maestros who was from South America, he fucking was there. And I remember him being like, you know, he was asking for it to get translated. And when someone spoke to, like, told him what was going on in Portuguese, he was just like, what? That's fucking crazy, bro. And I was like, dude, seeing that dude blown away. After that, it was an amazing experience. I had a lot of, like you were saying, a lot of introspection, a lot of jungle imagery. I was having stomach problems at the time, and I remember feeling like the snake going through my body and cleansing me. And I remember feeling like down to an atomic level healthier after taking it, like extreme. And that's, I mean, I've never gotten that from a substance. I've had ketamine, help take, like, feeling like it flushed anxiety out of me. You know, I've had cool experiences on acid and stuff, but it never felt so medicinal as ayahuasca did.
So
I found the
really
same
like...
thing when I like puked. The first time I took ayahuasca, when I puked, like, my barf, I don't know if this was like actually true or not, but it came out black. Like, it came out like I was purging like tar out of my gut. And it felt, that was what felt so cathartic for me. It was like I was barfing out like toxins or bad shit, or like fucking like the darkness in my soul or some shit like that. Like, it felt like I was like purging. That's, pretty classic, but just purging all of the darkness out of myself. And I felt so light afterwards, like I felt like I had lost baggage, like emotional baggage.
For sure,
like,
man. The day after I took it, I literally, so while taking it, one of the things that they refer to in this particular church is the waters, and the waters is tears, vomiting, shitting, everything that purges. It's like the purging of all the stuff. And there's a shamata that's basically calling the water. And when this lady would sing it, the amount of people that began throwing up and crying and everything, and I was sobbing, crying, not in a sad way. I was elated. I've never felt so blissful, and the level of euphoria, and it wasn't like a drug induced euphoria. It was like the universe telling me, "Fuck yeah, dude, you are awesome. I'm here for you. Like, take care of yourself. You are loved by not just the people you know, but by this world that you exist in." And it was fucking beautiful, dude. It was hilarious.
It is beautiful.
It was so rad. And the next day I was went to the beach up in St. Augustine, and the air tasted fucking sweet. The water was like beautiful feeling on my skin, and it was just, I felt renewed in a way that I've never felt in my entire life, especially, in regards to hallucinating. And it was fantastic. I mean, I highly, highly recommend the experience to anyone who can partake.
And that seems to be kind of the, the going, like, as ayahuasca comes, it's almost like leading the charge now as far as psychedelics, for somebody to have a spiritual experience with a shaman. Like, this whole idea of it being encapsulated in a group with a guide, it's like you're going up a mountain with Sherpas. Like, you feel safe, like they're guiding you along.
And it is extremely safe. Like I mean, when the issues that you would have while taking ayahuasca are generally from pre-existing conditions and from medications and illicit substances that you're on.
Yeah.
If you're taking it with the knowledge of, being healthy and not being on certain medications, you're going to have a safe trip. You're very unlikely to have any sort of negative physical reaction to the trip. Mentally, that's where you're at. But my personal experiences with just DMT in general, I feel like there's this loving, all-encompassing nature that like makes you feel really loved. I always refer to salvia as like evil DMT because like the onset is similar and the space is similar and the way that it takes you over your body is similar, but it's very spooky. It's like if it's mischievous. It's like if DMT was a dude and salvia was a dude, salvia would have like a little mustache, and be wearing a leather jacket, and it'd be standing on the corner and being like, "Hey man, you want to fucking party?" Whereas DMT's like fucking, it's like Bob Ross, and he's like, "Hey man, we're painting with really nice," and it's like giving you that like real sweet. I don't know, dude. I have read about people having bad trips, and obviously DMT is powerful psychedelic. It's scary at some points.
Bad trips are kind of subjective in a way as well.
I mean, I've also never had a bad trip on acid, and I've had a horrible trip on mushrooms. Some things agree with people better, I would assume.
And it can be the day too, like
exactly,
or where you're at mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Like that's the set, right? Like that's so that really can set everything up for
I remember
good or
one
bad
of my
ones.
friends who came with us for the ayahuasca trip. He was so fucking nervous. He was doing the thing where you have like nervous burps, where he's like, "Yeah, I'm ready to do a minute. I don't feel it'll be good." And they're like, "Oh," and went up to the maestro and was like, "Hey man, is it all right if I like start with a low dose? Because normally when I take psychedelics, I kind of like to control my experience a little bit." He's like, "You don't want to fucking try to control this shit, dude. If you try to control it, you're gonna have a bad time." And honestly, when I'd had like the first hour or 2 hours, it was very hard to tell time, which was funny because there was a clock right in front of me, like across the room, but directly in my vision. And I remember looking at it and being like, all right, 30 minutes has passed. I should be starting to feel something. And then by the time I looked back to find, like, I was like, oh no, it's 7:1:20, 30 o'clock right now. This is very, I was like, yep, there's no sense. Yeah, there's no clock anymore, dude. Like, this thing's just a fucking joke. But,
well,
so when I did relinquish control, though, was when I started out. I remember the first part being like I had some really dark fucking imagery with like dead bodies and roaches and like crazy shit, and that was like what I assumed was kind of the darkness leaving my body. And then it felt like this female spirit kind of entered me, and I remember talking with her and being like, "Hey, listen, I'm here." Like it felt like I was kind of flirting. I was like, "Hey, baby, what's up? Thanks for coming inside of me." Or like, like
literally,
I'm not like, show me what you're here to show me. I'm not fighting you. You're the boss. I don't know. I'm having an ultrasound on Wednesday, so
she didn't come
figure it out.
inside you.
Yeah,
she didn't pull
I hope
out.
she used protection. That's actually one of my new hustles. I'm selling DMT condoms, so when Brett goes up to the next dimension next time and he tries to fuck an alien, at least if he does, he can use some protection.
I don't need some fucking. I don't need alien fucking child support.
I was gonna say alien chlamydia. It burns in 30.
Yeah. Well, I think I think we kind of covered the bases on what we were looking for here. The journey continues. That's really what it is. DMT and all psychedelics, I think, are an ongoing journey. DMT smoked is kind of, to me, I would say it's like fucking going to the moon or Mars or the bottom of the ocean. Like it's as exploratory as it gets, and you kind of don't know what you're going to get. Whereas, something like ayahuasca seems like more of a kind of personalized version of kind of a cleansing and purification process while being kind of guided along the way in a very helpful way, as long as I guess you're open to it, or it's not that everything's going to be perfect all the time, but 9 times out of 10 from what I hear, everybody has a great experience, and would point to this experience as a literal turning point in their life, and say there's like the before doing ayahuasca and there's the after doing ayahuasca. And, I hope someday to be able to do it. And thank you guys for sharing your experiences with it. For everybody listening, if you're listening on the podcast and you'd like to help us out, you can leave a review on Apple iTunes. Anyways, so that's going to be it for now. Thanks everybody for listening. If you made it this far, we will see you next time. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out everywhere else. And until then, safe travels.
Wait, I got the OnlyFans in hyperspace where my feet turn into fractal elf shoes and I put them in space peanut butter. So subscribe to that as well,
Subscribe to that as well. Shout out.
I'm totally
OnlyFans.
subscribing to your OnlyFans.
This one's in hyperspace.
Peace.